Welcome to ICRTH Industrial Session on Sounds in Experiential Travel. Sounds are ubiquitous and form an integral part of our sensory experience in travel. In this session, we will discuss how we hear, what we want or prefer not to listen to, and how this affects our traveling experience. Our first speaker is Professor Dr. John Driver. John is Professor of Acoustic Ecology and Sound Art at Goldsmiths, University of London, where he co-leads the Unit for Sound Practice Research. Operating at the intersection of acoustics, audiology, urban design, sound art, and experimental music, his practice represents inquiry into the practice and experience of everyday soundscapes.
So it's a pleasure to be sharing my ideas with you today. My title of my talk is Aurodiverse Hearing Within Responsible Soundscapes of Tourism and Hospitality. My name is Professor John Driver from the Unit for Sound Practice Research at Goldsmiths, University of London. So today I'd like to share some important concepts with you that I think are very relevant to the themes of the conference, and they're around hearing and listening and place and environment. Most importantly is this concept of soundscape, my idea that's been around for a long time, particularly since the late 60s, early 70s, around the work of Murray Schafer, and I encourage you to look at his book, The Tuning of the World, which was first published in the early 70s, which was a really great introduction to the themes of the soundscape. More recently, the concept is as an international standard, which is defined here as the acoustic environment as perceived or experienced or understood by a person or people in context. And the standard goes on to explore context and what that could mean in many, many different ways, and the importance of really getting a grasp of what the context can be. A more nuanced definition here, which I quite like, is by Emily Thompson. She says, the soundscape's cultural aspects incorporate scientific and aesthetic ways of listening, a listener's relationship to their environment, and the social circumstances that dictate who gets to hear what. A soundscape, like a landscape, ultimately has more to do with civilization than of nature, and as such, it's constantly undergoing construction and always undergoing change. So here you can understand the concept of soundscape is actually quite difficult to define and pin down. Everyone has their own appreciation and understanding of the soundscape, and it's always changing. So how can we use this idea of soundscape in our work? One area is placemaking, and this is developing more and more in the modern world. A great example here is in Sheffield, in Sheaf Square. As you come out of the train station, you experienced a wonderful image of these huge metallic sculptures made of steel, which historically Sheffield was very famous for. But it's not just steel, it's also the water that flows over the metal in many, many different ways. And wherever you stand, it sounds slightly different. And it creates what we call a masking sound. It's a noise sound, lots of frequencies are present, but it blocks other sounds, like, for example, the sound of the traffic sound, which is perhaps less desirable to hear. The concept of soundscape connects a lot to heritage. And I'm sure you can all think of your own examples from your own life, from the own cities and homes and towns where you're from. I was brought up in Edinburgh, and I remember hearing the 1 o'clock gun every day at lunchtime in the school playground. And that kind of connected me to the city of Edinburgh, a very ancient sound. But interestingly, I went back there some years ago to record it and listen to it from the school playground again. And at 1 o'clock, I listened and I couldn't hear it. I found out later that actually they use a smaller gun now, and it's positioned slightly differently. So the same sound doesn't travel that same part of Edinburgh as it used to, which was an important part of its history and heritage. Does it matter? Well, I think it matters. Here's another example. This is in Birmingham, the amazing Selfridges building. It looks fantastic. It's very futuristic. One small thing, it's blocked the sound of the church bells from a very nice old church, and it has a full set of bells, which would have broadcast the bell sound over a wide part of Birmingham, but that's now blocked by this new building. Does it matter? Is that an important part of heritage or not? Another part of soundscape is the idea of tranquility, quietness, and silence, or relative silence. It's not just all about noise. And of course, as we experienced kind of COVID and lockdown, for some of us, we kind of searched out those quiet sounds, the everyday quiet sounds. The River Quaggy is a project an area where I've been working a little bit near the University in London. And we've been recording the sounds and thinking about the sound of the Quaggy and how they became more important during the lockdown and COVID, where people spent more time listening to their everyday soundscapes. And this little small river that goes through the houses very close by creates a kind of wonderful soundscape, a very fresh and wonderful bubbling soundscape. In contrast, there's this wonderful project in Beirut, the Pink Silent Room. Of course, Beirut being a very complex and busy city, perhaps you could call it a very noisy city. But here, the artist is offering a place of silence or relative silence to go to. But maybe every city should have a silent room. So how can we design soundscapes? We can create passive acoustic treatment. Here's a very nice project by Hans-Peter Kuhn, most famous for his light work and also theatre, sound design and theatre. But here he designed a very nice light and sound work within a tunnel that leads up to the train station in Leeds. And he sculpted the sides of the tunnel so as cars travel through, the sounds are absorbed in different ways, almost tuning the sound of the noise in a more kind of pleasant and interesting way, as well as introducing this very nice light display. Here's a very recent project by Jordan Lacey and his colleagues, a sonic gathering space in Melbourne. Here's a space where you can spend some time, you can sit down, you can listen to some sounds and experience some plants. The plants have been collected from different parts of Victoria, and the soundscapes have been collected from those same areas, the wildlife, countryside soundscapes. It back into the kind of busy Melbourne, and you can experience those sounds and think about how ambience and the design of ambience can impact a mood and improve the mood, perhaps. And beyond passive, kind of active soundscape intervention, we can introduce, new sounds, but we can also create a sense of agency and ownership, allowing people to control their own soundscape, which seems to be important as we're learning. Anderson Acoustics are developing such a site in the middle of London just now, where you can control the soundscape of a very busy, noisy, and complex space. And perhaps in the future, many people can get involved in composing the soundscape of that environment. So here's a simple method, soundscape methods, to begin to learn about what soundscapes are there. Sound walking. Sound walking is very simple. Often I work with groups of people and we walk. I created a route in advance and we walk very, very slowly. We turn off mobile phones and there's no talking, and the instruction is to listen. And we walk and we listen. Sometimes we stop and listen. And then at the end of our walk, we talk and discuss what we heard. But because we've been doing that for quite a long time, sometimes maybe an hour or 90 minutes, the hearing has become more acute, and people are really getting tuned into the sonic environment, and they become more aware of the sounds around them. And that can be a very useful tool to help begin to sculpt and compose the soundscape and learn about what sounds are important and what sounds are maybe annoying or unpleasant or an important part of heritage. Now, I want to kind of, towards the end of this talk a little bit about hearing, which I've found more and more important, and a concept that I've coined, which I call aural diversity. Very simple idea. It just says that we all hear differently. Acoustics has tended to design the world as if we all hear the same, which is not true. When I became a dad, of course, I learned that my kids hear very differently to me. My son found hand dryers in public toilets very stressful. My daughter also maybe found them stressful, but she enjoys being terrified, as you can see there. Of course, kids have very sensitive hearing. It's not the same as adults. And classrooms can be very noisy. Here's a little poster I saw in my son's classroom. Use quiet voices. And more and more kids are using earmuffs in classes to help them concentrate. because they're such noisy environments. So high-speed hand dryers were quite a surprising thing. Here's a photograph I took very early on in the project, collish and loud when in use, known to startle children. So why would you have such a device in a public toilet or a toilet at school or in an airport or in a restaurant, in the workplace? A device that basically can terrify kids and adults and trigger different hormones, flight and flight kind of response hormones. I mean, that would be a kind of natural response because you can be in quite a quiet environment, then trigger, and then suddenly there's loud sound. Now, the loudness, I realized, was actually being used for marketing. The idea that loudness means they're really drying your hands. And you can see in those days, the early names of hand dryers was all about some kind of militarized sound. And so the measurements I was making in this study were often, this is decibels, often up in 80 A-weighted decibels, up into 90 A-weighted decibels, sometimes peaking above 100 A-weighted decibels. That's extremely loud, particularly for a space as sensitive and complex as the toilet. Very, very loud. And as I developed the project, I started to talk to more parents and carers and people from different backgrounds. I realized that lots of people are having problems with high-speed hand dryers and toilets. And it's not just children, it's also older people. Particular needs, people with high blood pressure, people with people with cochlear implants or hearing aid users. And a very important group is in the list in the middle there, for example, people with hyperacusis when they've got a very low pain threshold and the world is just too loud. Or misophonia when particular sounds make people very uncomfortable and angry. Or post-traumatic stress syndrome or dementia. The list goes on. It's quite an incredible list of thinking about different people in society who are finding something as everyday as high-speed hand dryers simply too loud and, to use the word, an important word, intolerable. They can't cope with it. It's just too loud. And in that situation, it means people can't function and participate in society. So we've been developing this concept of oral diversity, and we've got a book coming out very soon, working with Andrew Hugo, which I really encourage you to look at because it involves participation and papers from a wide range of people from different backgrounds exploring all the issues of hearing. Because I feel that we've been living in an arotypical world. And I wonder if your research, your practice in tourism and hospitality is arotypical. That means as if we all hear the same. And is that hearing, that normal hearing is correct and natural, when in fact, throughout life, our hearing will change. It'll become more sensitive and less sensitive in different kinds of ways. Even throughout the day, our hearing sensitivity changes. And that's important. This is quite complex, this issue, of course. And here's Andrew Hugo's map of all different kind of hearing issues that might come into discussion around oral diversity. So as you can see, it's a very big subject and complex. But all these things are putting together, and sometimes they might connect in different kinds of ways. One particular important group we must remember is autistic people. Now, autistic people can have very, very sensitive hearing, or they can be hypo, so they can be actually drawn towards loud sounds. So it's interesting. It's important not to generalize. So I encourage you in your work, thinking about hospitality and tourism, to think about what sounds do you have in your workplace? What sounds are designed? What sounds are accidental? What kind of people how are different kind of people experiencing and understanding these sounds? Is it repelling them? Is it bringing people in? And really, I want to encourage you to think as inclusively as possible to really open up the soundscape for a kind of wider society. Great, so thanks for listening to my talk.
Our next speaker is Rob McKay, who is an award-winning composer, sound artist, and performer. His recent projects have moved towards a cross-disciplinary approach, including geology, soundscape ecology, theatre, audiovisual installation work, and human-computer interaction. His work has been performed in 18 countries, including several performances on BBC Radio 3, BBC Radio 1 and Radio France, and a number of his pieces have received international awards. He is a senior lecturer in music at Newcastle University and is currently the chair of UK and Ireland Soundscape Community.
Hi, my name's Rob Mackay and I'm a senior lecturer in composition at Newcastle University. I'm going to talk to you about two sound mapping projects that I ran in Scarborough, UK, between 2019 and 2021. I worked with community groups to develop sound maps in collaboration with a local arts science organisation called Invisible Dust. Scarborough itself has a very long history with tourism, actually being Britain's first seaside resort, dating back as far as 1660. The organisation that commissioned me to work with the community groups, Invisible Dust, is a sort of crossover arts science organisation, and the mission of their organisation is to encourage awareness of and meaningful responses to climate change and environmental issues. They achieve that by facilitating a dialogue between leading visual artists, creative technologists, and scientists. So the first of the two projects was part of an overarching project called eCode, that saw workshop participants aged 9 to 13 who are actually part of Scarborough Library's Code Club, and they work with 3 different artists. I worked with them between January and March 2019. I took them out on 2 field recording trips to capture the sounds of their local environment. And once those were collected, the young people created their own soundscape compositions using a coding language called Sonic Pi. And then the results of the field recording workshops were uploaded to Google Maps, and showed them how to use Google Maps for free to upload sounds of a place to create an online sound map to share the sounds of how a particular environment sounds. We also installed a Streambox on the roof of Scarborough Library, which contains a Raspberry Pi computer in a weatherproof housing. That was done in collaboration with an organisation called SoundCamp, and that broadcasts the sounds in real time on the Locus Sonus sound map, which is an open source sound map, and I'll show you that in a minute. So there are sort of 2 online ways to engage the wider world with the soundscape of Scarborough. And I'm actually just going to play you a short clip now from the workshops. But essentially, the eCode project introduces young children and young people and children to the natural world, inspiring them to investigate local biodiversity and understand that human activity can affect nature in negative ways. It helps them to join the dots, ask questions, and find creative ways to inform the wider public about climate change and environmental issues closer to home. And this is a short video that was made about the sound workshops.
Invisible Dust is an arts and science organisation. We work with artists and scientists to explore environmental issues and climate change. And we are very keen to encourage more children and young people to take an interest in the world around them, to develop this fantastic eCode project, which we're doing in partnership with North Yorkshire Libraries, working with their Code Club.
So what we did was start right off with doing some field recording sessions.
When we recorded like the sounds, we used recorders and headphones.
See, we're on 15. So you want to write?
Another person had a noteboard and it said track and a number at the bottom, and then the person had to write track whatever and what sounds it recorded.
So we went and recorded some sounds around Scarborough.
The waves like crashing and stuff, and seagulls and birds. and it sounded so good.
We recorded in like a duck pond, by a bridge, under the water, lots of other stuff like that.
Step 2 is more of a creative response, where it's a kind of group project where each of the kids are choosing 1 or 2 sounds, and they've been editing those down and cleaning them up. And then we're using a piece of coding software called Sonic Pi. And that's a very simple coding language that allows you to start manipulating sound and even creating music.
And you can put 2 sounds together, so if you like that sound and that sound, you can put them together.
I had the sounds and then went into Audacity and altered them, made them slower, made them quicker, cut them and just made them sound pretty weird. There was some pretty alien sounds afterwards. We put them on a sound map so you can access it on the internet and then click on it and it would have the recording which we'd had when we recorded it.
And they just click on something and then they can hear the sounds from that place.
So everyone around the world can hear what sounds does Scarborough have.
People who don't know Scarborough will just like click on something and then they hear the sounds from that place.
There's a lot of good sounds. If people heard them, they'll will feel so relaxed and happy.
Most of all, I enjoyed the trips and listening to all the sounds and being aware of what's around me.
Well, it just feels like just that unbelievable that I've created this thing that everyone can look at.
Look at the different ways that we can use sound creatively to hopefully convey a sense of place. But actually, if you stop and listen actively and mindfully, really is a whole world of sound out there that tells us so much more and connects us so much more with the world around us. Okay, and this is the Google map that we made. All of the blue points here were made by actually uploading the sounds to a YouTube video and then embedding those into Google Maps. This is a hydrophone recording just made off South Bay. And also on the Locus Sonus sound map, which is run by the University of Marseille and the Art School in Aix-en-Provence in south of France, you can see there's loads of dots on here that represent live streams, and this is the Scarborough Library live stream right now on the 27th, I think it is, of August. Classic seagulls. So the second of the projects was called Sea Songs, and that was part of Wild Eye. And Wild Eye aims to foster a greater understanding of the incredible wildlife found across the North Yorkshire coast through artworks and events, raising awareness of issues around nature, biodiversity and climate change. This time I worked with Scarborough Sixth Form College students, and we went out on actually three field recording workshops, one on the South Bay. We could hear, listen to rock pools and hear seaweed photosynthesizing through bubbles. We also were able to, on the boat trips, listen to dolphins underwater and seals, and also a huge amount of anthropogenic noise. We then worked with the students to create a sound piece. And finally, we created a geolocated sound walk in the app Echoes, which allows people to use their smartphones to walk along the South Bay of Scarborough and listen to the sounds that are just a few meters off the shoreline. Again, there's a short video around this, which is created by Jamie Muir, that kind of gives you a sense of that too.
I'm going to probably take away that you should notice sounds more. I don't really notice them as much when I come to the beach. I just sort of come here and I don't think about what I hear. Whereas when I come next time, I'm going to listen out for specific things like the waves and the traffic.
I'm looking at doing environmental science or ecology.
Yeah, I'm going to do ecology too, because it's a mix of like geography and biology. It's very interesting.
Yeah, the art department got us involved.
Especially when we live by the coast. Feels like it means something to get involved.
I was really pleased with how this sort of second phase of the project has gone. So we ended up planning 2 boat trips rather than the 1, because we wanted to have a sort of a better chance of getting the dolphins, because they're very transient, and you never know when they're going to turn up. And then having Stuart with us as well from Scarborough Porpoise meant that we had that vital information for working with people who are observing from the land where the porpoises and the dolphins are being spotted. So yeah, we managed on the Monday, we decided to go south, and we went south of Caton Bay, and because it was high tide, it was a perfect time to try and record the seals in the water. And just beyond Caton Bay there were just tons of seals, and they all came up to the boat and they were like really checking us out and being quite playful. That was brilliant. And all the different seabirds that we saw puffins and razorbills and gannets, and yeah, it was really, really wonderful seeing that sort of richness of life. The seals were very, very vocal above the water. I was really surprised at how vocal they were, and I heard at least 2 different kinds of calls, but for the majority of the time they were making this kind of wailing sound. It almost sounded a bit like wolves howling. And then yesterday happened, and the exciting thing was, yes, there have been some dolphins spotted going north, and you could see these really big splashes in the water, and they were coming right out of the water and sort of flopping in, and then they came right towards the boat, and they went across our bow, slopped the hydrophones in, and we could hear them communicating. Kind of a surprise, quite how much noise pollution there is around the harbour and from the boats, and how far the sound travels. In a really quiet spot, when we think above the waves, we think, yeah, it's nice and quiet here. Stick the hydrophones in and you can hear a boat engine. Where is it? And then you see this boat is about half a mile away. And it really brings home, I think, what the marine organisms are having to deal with.
Definitely. I really like the past stuff that you guys have done, so yeah, really good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, it's really good. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
definitely.
definitely. Yeah.
Okay, So that's the end of my presentation. There are links to all of these things on the Invisible Dust website. You can link to the online sound map and a Locusona sound map. There's also the sound piece that we created for Sea Songs, and this is a website explaining the Echoes XYZ app. But thanks very much for listening, and look forward to some Q&A. Thank you.
The third part of our session today will be presented by Associate Professor Dr. Laurie Gooding and Dr. Indra Savaraja. Laurie, PhD with Music Therapy Board Certification, is Associate Professor of Music Therapy at Florida State University. Her primary clinical work has been in hospital settings, and her research focuses on music therapy education and music therapy and psychosocial care. She is a Fulbright Scholar and the current president of the American Music Therapy Association. Indra is music therapy and music psychology lecturer at the University of Putra Malaysia Department of Music and the current chair of the Global Crisis Intervention Commission for the World Federation of Music Therapy. She also serves on the Strategic Development and Finance Committee under the International Association for Music and Medicine and the Malaysian Society for Music in Medicine Committee.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The next presentation for our Sounds in Experiential Travel panel focuses on music therapy and experiential tourism. My name is Dr. Indra Savaraja, and I am a music therapy faculty at University Putra, Malaysia. I will be moderating the next part of our session, and it is my privilege to introduce to you my colleague, Associate Professor Dr. Laurie Gooding of Florida State University, also President of the American Music Therapy Association, who will begin our next presentation with an experiential exercise. Please sit back, relax, and listen to Dr. Gooding's voice.
If you are comfortable, close your eyes and focus on your breathing. Take a few deep breaths, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. Continue to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth as you feel yourself relax. As you focus on your breathing, imagine you're in Sarawak with your family. You're walking to your hotel room after checking in, tired from travel, but also eager for your vacation to begin. As you open the room door, you're greeted by relaxation music and the sounds of the rainforest. You hear the gentle sound of the gamelan, the bamboo flute, and a piano gently lilting from the speakers, accompanied by the sounds of birds, insects, and rain. The lights are dimmed, and the music and lights greet you like a calm oasis on the first day of your vacation. You notice the images of local arts, culture, and activities scrolling across the television screen, inviting you to connect with the community. You feel yourself begin to relax, and you look forward to slowing down, connecting with your family, and taking time for your own care and well-being. Continue to allow yourself to relax and focus on your vacation, your family, and slowing down.
What you just experienced illustrates all the points Dr. Laurie Gooding and I are going to be talking about in this presentation regarding a music therapy-informed approach to slow tourism. Needless to say, this is not the only potential application of music therapy into experiential tourism, but we feel that this angle is particularly relevant given that some of the major reasons why people go on vacation are as follows on the next slide.
The concept of music therapy-informed slow tourism is supported by three primary pillars: music and wellness, meeting needs, and building impactful connections. Boxes 1 and 2 on the left side of the screen highlight how music enhances quality of life and maximizes well-being, and the fact that music is increasingly integrated in immersive travel experiences. Box 3, in the middle of the screen, points out how individuals are motivated to travel to meet a wide range of needs, including the need for physical and emotional recreation. Finally, the last two boxes include information on how travel can be a means of building impactful connections, enriching individuals' lives, and promoting individual growth and change. These boxes also show the positive impact that travel can have on perceptions and relationships. Thus, music therapy-informed travel experiences combine music and well-being, meeting needs, and impactful connections to promote social connection and change, which, when considered in the context of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, speaks to how travel can help individuals fulfill psychological needs and promote self-actualization. As such, travel can be a resource for promoting health and well-being.
So slow tourism has been described as the next big hospitality trend. According to EHL Insights, the hospitality news portal, slow tourism is forecasted to continue growing in popularity at a 10% compound annual growth rate, and is fast becoming an alternative to more traditional holidays. The COVID-19 pandemic has only accelerated interest in slow tourism as people seek deeper and more mindful experiences. Slow tourism encourages people to slow down, engage with the environment through the senses to facilitate deeper experiences, learn about local culture, relax, reconnect, rediscover, and live a meaningful life. A music therapy approach is a natural fit for slow tourism. It involves the strategic use of music as a means to influence and entrain our physiological responses. With the exercise you experienced at the start of this presentation, The music, in combination with Dr. Laurie Gooding's voice, was designed to help facilitate the feeling of winding down, promoting relaxation by gradually slowing down your heart rate and deepening your breathing, as well as reducing muscular tension. From research, we know that long-term stress has a serious health threat and poses a real economic burden on both the workers and corporations that hire them. Effective interventions for the rehabilitation and facilitation of return to work that are music therapy informed are cost-effective, non-threatening, and most of all, fun and enjoyable. It can also involve the whole family. Vacation can play an important role in helping an increasingly stressed and tired workforce recuperate their energy levels and recharge their tired bodies while reconnecting with their families. Slow tourism emphasizes connections to local people, cultures, food, and music. Slow tourism that infuses a music therapy-informed approach helps people to form authentic and meaningful connections with the people and places they are traveling to. By engaging their senses, shifting their mood, their thoughts, and their emotions in ways that facilitate deeper and more meaningful experiences. A music therapy-informed approach can help create vacation experiences that are more restorative, satisfying, and memorable. We hope today's experiential exercise helped you to consider how music therapy-informed experiences can enhance slow tourism. Thank you. If you would like more information regarding our presentation, please feel free to ask questions during the question and answer session. Dr. Laurie Gooding and I will be at hand to answer any questions. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our panel presentation. Thank you for being an attentive audience. We hope that the presentations in this panel have provided you with new insights into how the fields of soundscape and music therapy can lend new depths and dimensions to experiential tourism. As tourists become more sophisticated and educated, leading to a shift in what they desire from their vacation destinations, they are looking for authentic experiences that are immersive and provide additional levels of stimulation and sensory experience. It is our belief that the applications of soundscape and music therapy in ways that harness the use of sound in all of its potentialities, as demonstrated through the 3 presentations, add richness and resonance to experiential travel.